Hi everybody, my name is Sophie and today's video will hopefully be really helpful and informative for you guys. And so today's video is going to be tips on how I passed the RICA test, or the Reading Instruction Competency Assessment, I think is what it stands for. And so if you're a teacher or a soon-to-be teacher, student teacher, you know that that's one of the tests that you have to take in California to become credentialed. I'm going to just share some tips, some things that I used that I found to be really helpful because it is a challenging test and you do need to pass it to become a teacher. So would be to get this study book. So I got Ready for RICA by Zarello. I will insert a picture of it right here. I don't have the physical book with me right now. Also try to put the link. I think I got it off Amazon. I think it was like, I got it last summer, so I don't remember, but I don't think it was too expensive. It might have been like $11, so I will try to find the link and link it in the description. But definitely, if there's one thing you buy to study, buy that book. Honestly, everything, I want to say probably 85% of the test, if not more, was from that book. So really important to read that book. And then what I did, because I like taking notes, I don't know, I think it helps me study and it makes me feel better. So I got an Erin Condren notebook because I also just really wanted a notebook and thought it was a good excuse to get one, and wrote notes from every chapter in this notebook. And please don't let this overwhelm you. I basically wrote the entire book in this notebook, which again, not necessary. Please do not do that. It took me so much time and it's really not necessary. Like, you will 100% pass. Like, you don't need to write notes like this to pass. I just did it from my own brain. Definitely not necessary, but as you can tell, there is a lot of information. And so it's just really helpful to read the book. And I would recommend like reading it in chunks and not trying to read it all in a day. It's not a super long book, but there is a lot of information. So I would recommend kind of spreading it out. I know I started studying in June, I believe. And I took the test in August. And so I wanted to take it, I think I wanted to take the test like in July. So I started studying like a month and a half before. But because of COVID, there were no tests for a while. And so that's why I took it at the end of August. But I probably studied for at least a month consistently. And then studied just like a week before I took it. I reviewed everything. And I would just go over like a few chapters a week. I'd read it, take some notes on it, and and so I definitely would recommend reading the book, maybe taking some notes on it. Definitely, you don't need to take as many notes as I did. That was way too much. And if I had to do it again, I would not take this many notes because it's just way too much. But yeah, so that book, 100%, use that book, study, read it, because it is so helpful. Another thing that's nice when you read the book is it gives, let me find it in here. It gives like ways to differentiate instructions for ELs, advanced learners, and students with disabilities. And those differentiation techniques are like pretty consistent throughout the book. And so it's kind of nice because once you know them after the first few chapters, they mostly stay the same and are just a little bit adapted depending on, whether you're doing reading comprehension or phonics. They change a little bit, but I mean, it's mostly the same idea. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, the book is really well organized and has lots of the key information that you will need. So that is tip 1, is to get the Ready for RICA book and read it, take some notes on it. All right, tip number 2 is to watch distance prep, specifically distance prep, RICA prep videos. And I will link his videos in the description. Those helped me so much. And so he goes over different case studies. And so if you don't know, maybe I should talk about the different parts of the RICA first. That might be helpful. Okay. So the RICA is composed of 70 multiple choice questions. And the multiple choice questions cover 5 domains. And those domains are, I think, planning, organizing, and managing reading instruction, fluency, comprehension, phonological awareness, and phonemic awareness. And I don't remember the 5th one. Oh, and vocabulary, academic language. Yeah. I think those are the 5. I don't know why I was holding up 6 fingers, but I think those are the 5 domains. Also, if you just look up, like, if you go to the RICA website, it tells you all of that, and there's a really helpful document that gives the breakdown of the different domains and the percentage of each domain. And so that's also important because different domains are weighted differently. And so I think that fluency is like the number one. I think that's like 35% of the test, and so I would spend a lot of time on fluency because that's really important. And then I think comprehension and vocab is next, and then like planning instruction is only like 10%. So I also would study based on that, and definitely make sure you know certain like domains better than others if you don't have time to like memorize them all, because it is a lot, because the case study and the essay questions will be on fluency and comprehension. So yeah, so that's the other part. So you have 70 multiple choice questions that are split up between the different domains. And then I believe there's 4 essay questions. I think there's 2 that are shorter, that are like 75 to 125 words, and then 2 that are, I want to say, 150 to 300 words. And then you have the case study that's like 500 to 700 words. And so the first 2 smaller essays, I can't remember what exactly like the prompts were and whatever, but I do know that there's 2 shorter essays, 2 longer essays, and the case study. And so for me, the thing that I was most nervous about was the case study, because for the case study, it gives you sample student data. So it could be a writing prompt, a reading assessment, a survey, a questionnaire, just things that tell you about the student. And then there's a little paragraph with the blurb, like Kayla is in 11th grade or Kayla is in 4th grade. And then it'll just give you information. And then from that, you'll have to identify 2 strengths, 2 weaknesses, and then give a lesson plan of how you would help her, basically. And so that's the case study. And I was super nervous for that because it's just very overwhelming, because I took a class that kind of prepared us for RICA. It really didn't. It was supposed to, but it really was not all that helpful in preparing us for RICA. And my professor said that if you don't pass the case study, then you probably won't pass RICA, even if you did super well on the multiple choice, because the case study is just weighted that much. And so yeah, so obviously that's like terrifying, because you want to pass on your first try and you really need to know the case study, and it is a little intimidating because you do have to be able to identify strengths, weaknesses, and the lesson plan. You have to be able to like write a lesson plan, or more like an activity of what you would do to help the student. It doesn't sound as scary as it is. And so Distance Prep has these YouTube videos of this guy who goes over sample essays, and then like we'll write out the draft, or not the draft, but like a brainstorm of the strengths, the weaknesses, and then talk about possible lessons or activities you can do. And that is probably hands down, besides reading a book, the most helpful thing that I think helped me pass RICA. I think without his videos, I don't know if I would have passed. So I'm definitely going to link his videos. And he has a ton. You don't have to watch them all because he does have a lot. I probably did watch them all just because I wanted to be as prepared as possible. But I definitely would recommend watching his videos, taking some notes on the different strengths and weaknesses and lessons, because even though you're probably not going to get the same questions that he goes over in his videos, a lot of the same issues and strengths and weaknesses and lessons can be applied to like multiple different essays. And so I definitely would use a lot of his strategies that he talks about, because a lot of them are super broad. Like it's like use a graphic organizer, or I can't remember because I took it so long ago, but he does give a lot of great strategies that are kind of broad that you could use multiple like essay questions depending on what they ask. So yeah, so that would be my second piece of advice, is to watch those videos and take notes, because that will really, really help you. And then that goes into my third piece of advice, which is to practice writing the essays and sticking to the word count beforehand, because that is something that I didn't do. Like I practiced writing some essays, and I practiced like my brainstorming and just coming up, like I would look at practice questions and come up with like the strengths, the weaknesses, and like a lesson, and either go through it in my head or like write a few bullet points, but I didn't take the time to actually like write out a draft. which I would recommend that you do because I tend to overwrite. And so on the test, it says your word count, and if you are over it, it won't let you submit it. And so I think I was like 150 words over, and I had to spend at least like 5 minutes, maybe longer, going through my essay and like rewording things and taking things out. And you just don't want to be doing that on the test. I think that there is like enough time to finish everything. Like I know I had probably at least 30 minutes to go when I finished, and I know a lot of people in my cohort also finished with enough time. But if you could practice writing beforehand and not have to spend the extra time on the test trying to cut down your word limit, I would recommend that because it can be stressful and you just don't want to have to do that. You know, you'd rather just get in and then get out and not have to worry about, you know, taking out 100 more words. So yes, that is my third piece of advice, would be to practice writing your essays beforehand. It also just makes you more comfortable with the language, talking about it, and yeah, will probably just make you less stressed going into it. So that would be advice number 3, which leads me into advice number 4, which would be take full-on practice tests beforehand and time yourself. And that I did. I did take practice tests, and I think that that also prepared me a lot because if you go onto the RICA website, there is a practice test on there, and so I took that one, and that one is super similar to the actual test. And so obviously I don't think there's any of the exact questions on the test, but they are so similar. And yeah, and like the wording is very similar because sometimes the wording is weird. So I would definitely, even if you don't want to take a full-on practice test, I would recommend at least like looking at the questions and reading through them. Just because on the test you could get questions that have very similar wording, and you might even get a question that's the same. And so you don't want to like kick yourself because you didn't take that practice test and check what the answer was and then you had that question or a super similar question. Sorry. So yeah, I definitely recommend taking practice tests. There's also other practice tests that you can find online. I think I just looked up RICA practice test and a website came up that had practice tests, and then they actually told you your score and whether or not you were like likely to pass or not. And so it's kind of scary if you get like not likely to pass and you're taking it like in a few days. So hopefully that doesn't happen to you. But if you take it and it tells you you're extremely likely to pass, that would be a huge relief and hopefully make you feel more confident and relaxed. And so I definitely recommend taking those practice tests and timing yourself to make sure that you have enough time and that you're able to answer the questions without being like too stressed or too rushed. And yeah, I'm trying to think of any other good tips to give you guys. Like I'm trying to think back if I did anything else. I think I just read the book, took notes, watched the videos, and took practice tests. And I think if you do all those things, you should be good. And then, you know, just test taking strategies when you go into the test. Don't overthink. You got this. You studied a lot. You know the material. You know, don't overthink it. I think that's something when I take tests that I was so nervous about, is that I overthink the question and then end up getting it wrong, or I'll go and like change my answer and then have it right the first time and then change it. So I also, like, when you go in to take the test, don't change your answers, don't go back, unless you, like, were uncertain about something and then something else in the test made you remember the answer, or maybe you just remembered it and then know for sure that, like, what you picked was wrong and now you know the right answer, then obviously change it. But if you guessed and then you go back and then you're, like, second guessing yourself and you're like, maybe, like, just leave your initial gut choice because it might be right. And if it's not, if you miss one question, like, that's fine. You don't have to get them all right. So yeah, I'd say as far as test taking strategies go, just relax, be confident in yourself. All right, well, I think those are all my tips for you. So I think I'm gonna end the video there. I really hope that these tips are helpful for you and that you pass on your first try. You got this, you can do it, you're so smart. Let me know in the comments if those resources in this video is helpful. Oh my God, my voice. Also, my gosh. Also, feel free to follow along on my Instagram. It's Soph Teaches Tinies. I will link it in the description below as well. And yeah, I hope you have an awesome day or night whenever you're watching this video, or morning. And I hope you pass RICA because you got this, you can do it, and I believe in you. Saving some, saving some, saving some, saving some.
safe and sound.